luxury collections, cars, watches, jets, works of art. The millionaire hobby. Few people talk about it openly, but there comes a point in life when money ceases to impress those who possess it. Curious, isn't it? When everything can be bought, the value is no longer in the price, but in the meaning. That's where luxury collections come in. Not as empty ostentation, but as a silent reflection of identity, power, and long-term vision. The paradox is simple. The richer someone becomes, the less they need to prove, and the more selective they become. Perhaps you've thought that million-dollar cars, rare watches, or priceless works of art are just extravagant whims. But the truth is that behind these choices lies strategy, psychology, and even asset protection. Many of the super-rich don't see these items as expenses, but rather as stores of value, emotional assets, and symbols of legacy. What seems like luxury is, in practice, often discipline disguised as pleasure. And here comes the unsettling statement. Those who understand this game early on think differently about money, time, and choices. It's not about wanting to have everything, but about knowing how to choose well. Throughout this content, you will realize that the millionaire hobby is not for those who have the most money, but for those who have the most clarity. And perhaps, in the middle of this journey, you will discover that collecting doesn't start with objects. It starts with mindset. The human instinct to collect, and why millionaires take it to the extreme. There is something profoundly human in the act of collecting. From childhood, he already kept figurines, unusual stones, or objects that seemed ordinary to others, but full of meaning for him. Over time, this instinct doesn't disappear. It matures. In millionaires, this impulse takes on another scale, because money ceases to be the end and becomes merely the tool. Luxury collections emerge as an extension of identity, almost like a silent signature left on the world. When someone collects rare cars, historic watches, or unique works of art, they are not simply buying expensive objects. They are organizing memories, symbolic power, and a sense of belonging. A limited edition car represents more than just speed. It carries a history, an unrepeatable engineering feat, a specific moment in world history. Similarly, an antique watch doesn't just measure time, it preserves it. This is why million-dollar hobbies rarely arise from impulse, and almost always from intention. From the outside it might seem exaggerated, but there's a method to it all. Many of these collectors started small: a special first watch, a striking car, a work of art acquired through emotional connection. Gradually, they realized that certain pieces not only retain their value, but become more desirable over the years. And that's where the game changes, because collecting ceases to be just a pleasure and begins to touch on something bigger, something that explains why some collections are worth more than entire companies. Luxury cars, supercars, rarities, and models that become investments. For many millionaires, cars have never been just means of transportation. They function as moving sculptures, capable of uniting extreme engineering, timeless design, and calculated scarcity. Those who enter this universe quickly learn that it's not about having many cars, but about having the right ones. A rare model, produced in few units, can be worth more, parked in a climate-controlled garage, than driving on the streets. It's common to see collectors start with a car that marked their own journey. The first sports car they acquired, that model that symbolized a financial turning point. Over time, their perspective changes. They begin to seek out limited editions, farewell series, versions with unique stories. A short production Ferrari, a classic Porsche restored with original parts, or an exclusive Bugatti tell stories that money alone can't buy. The curious detail is that, in this million-dollar hobby, emotion and strategy go hand in hand. Some follow international auctions, study historical appreciation, and talk to other collectors before closing a deal. Others follow their instincts, but almost always succeed because they understand the game of time and scarcity. And when you realize that certain cars appreciate more than traditional assets, it becomes impossible not to look at the next type of collection with different eyes, especially when it involves something you wear on your wrist. Million-dollar watches, status, engineering, and the hidden value of time. Luxury watches carry a symbolism that few objects can achieve. On a collector's wrist, they don't shout wealth. They whisper history, discipline, and respect for time. For those who have already won the financial game, the watch ceases to be an accessory and becomes a silent reminder that every second well spent builds legacies. That's why many millionaires prefer discreet pieces, but ones laden with meaning. Behind every rare watch lies an almost artistic obsession with perfection. Microscopic gears, decades of tradition, movements that span generations. There are collectors who spend years waiting for a single piece, rejecting easy money and choosing patience. Some learn to study references, serial numbers, and specific years because they know that small details transform an ordinary watch into a historical jewel. Interestingly, many begin with a single significant watch, a symbolic gift, a personal achievement, a silent victory. From there, their perspective changes. They begin to see time not as something that passes, but as something that accumulates. And when they understand that certain watches are more valuable when kept than worn, an inevitable question arises. What happens when the collectible no longer fits on the wrist and begins to pierce the sky? Private jets and helicopters, when collecting becomes extreme mobility. For some millionaires, the sky ceases to be the limit and becomes part of their collection. Private jets and helicopters enter this hobby not only for practicality, but for absolute control over time and space. Those who collect aircraft are not just buying comfort, they are buying autonomy. It's the difference between adapting to the world's agenda or making the world adapt to one's own agenda. Many start with a single functional jet, almost out of necessity. Over time, the pattern changes. Customized aircraft emerge, with exclusive interiors, rare models that are no longer manufactured. Some choose one jet for long distances and another for short flights, almost like choosing a different watch for each occasion. Everything is considered: range, quietness, aesthetics, and even the history of that specific model. The most interesting point is that, at this level, collecting becomes an invisible strategy. A well-maintained rare jet can become more valuable over the years, especially when it goes out of production. Some owners treat their aircraft as technical works of art, with teams dedicated solely to preservation. And when you realize that the sky also holds exclusivity, it becomes impossible not to look at another type of collection, one that doesn't move but crosses centuries without losing value. Works of art. Why billionaires pay fortunes for a painting. When it comes to art, the game changes completely. Unlike cars, watches, or jets, a work of art serves no practical function, and that's precisely why it becomes so powerful. For the experienced collector, a painting is not decoration, it's a narrative. It represents a worldview, a historical period, an emotion frozen in time that cannot be replicated, only contemplated. Many millionaires report that their first artwork was purchased due to an emotional connection, not a strategic decision. Something about the style, the color, or the artist's story resonated deeply. Later, over time, comes the research, artistic movements, most valued periods, and up-and-coming artists. Some even visit studios, international art fairs, and private exhibitions to understand the context before buying, because they know that art rewards those who observe before acting. The curious detail is that, in this universe, value is rarely obvious. There are paintings bought for modest sums that years later become sought-after pieces by museums and collectors worldwide. Those who understand this realize that art is not about ostentation, but about vision. And when you enter this circle, something even more interesting emerges. Secret places where these works circulate far from the spotlight and where the real decisions are made. The secret circle. Exclusive clubs, private auctions, and millionaire networking. Few people realize it, but great collections are rarely built in public. They are born in discreet rooms, with restricted invitations and conversations that don't appear on social media. At this level, the true asset is not just the object, but access. Private clubs, closed auctions, and select gatherings function as portals where valuable information circulates before reaching the common market. That's where many collectors learn by observing. A subtle comment about a piece about to be discontinued, a tip about an underrated artist, or a car that's been stored for decades makes all the difference. Those who enter this circle discover that networking, in this context, isn't about exchanging business cards, but about building trust over the years. Sometimes, a good conversation is worth more than a large check. Interestingly, many millionaires say it was in this environment that they understood the true value of a collection. It's not just about what you own, but about who you share it with. These encounters shape decisions, broaden perspectives, and refine taste. And when someone realizes that their choices begin to speak for them even before they open their mouth, a silent question arises. How does all this come to define who they are? How collections shape the identity of the super-rich? Over time, the collection ceases to be something the millionaire possesses and becomes something that represents them. Each choice reveals values, worldview, and even personality traits. Some prefer precision and engineering, reflected in watches and high-tech cars. Others choose art and historical pieces, showing sensitivity and appreciation for legacy. Without saying a word, the collection tells who that person is. Many only realize this after several years of collecting. When looking at the collection, they see patterns, repetition of styles, eras, brands, or concepts. The collection is a mirror of the collector's inner state. Those who seek control tend towards extremely organized collections. Those who value freedom choose rare and less obvious pieces. Nothing there is random, even when it seems so. The most interesting thing is that this identity begins to influence decisions outside of the hobby. Businesses, partnerships, and even friendships start to align with this quietly constructed image. The collection becomes an extension of one's own history. And when that happens, an inevitable concern arises. Maintaining all of this requires much more than money. It involves costs, risks, and responsibilities that almost no one sees. The invisible cost, maintenance, security, and logistics of multi-million-dollar collections. Few people realize it, but the biggest challenge of a multi-million-dollar collection begins after the purchase. Maintaining rare cars requires specialized workshops, hard-to-find original parts, and professionals who understand that specific model. Watches need regular maintenance, controlled environments, and careful handling. Works of art require climate control, robust insurance, and almost surgical transport. None of this is visible in the shop window, but it silently weighs on the collection. Over time, collectors learn that preservation is just as important as acquisition. Some assemble entire teams just to care for their collections, with curators, technicians, and security specialists. A simple mistake, like storing a piece in the wrong place, can destroy value built up over decades. That's why many millionaires say that collecting isn't expensive. What's expensive is poorly maintaining a collection. This constant care changes the relationship with objects. They cease to be merely symbols of achievement and begin to represent responsibility. Each piece demands attention, discipline, and long-term planning. And when someone realizes they are caring for something that may outlive them, an inevitable reflection arises. What will happen to all of this when time does what it always does? When collecting becomes a legacy, inheritances, personal museums, and perpetuating the name. At some point in their journey, every great collector takes a silent pause and wonders what it all means in the long run. It's no longer about possessing, but about enduring. Many millionaires begin to see their collections as bridges between generations, something that carries values, history, and worldview. A well-constructed collection transforms into a family narrative, passed down as one passes on principles, not just possessions. Some choose to structure intelligent inheritances, preparing children and heirs to understand the cultural and historical value of the pieces. Others go further and create foundations, private exhibitions, or even personal museums. At this stage, the hobby ceases to be intimate and begins to engage with the world. The collection becomes a form of contribution, a way to immortalize ideas, tastes, and choices made throughout life. The most curious thing is that few people plan this from the beginning. The legacy emerges almost without warning, when the collector realizes that certain pieces already tell a story bigger than themselves. And it is precisely at this point that everything takes on a different weight. Because understanding the legacy completely changes the way one looks at money, time, and life itself. What do you do with all of this now? After understanding this universe, it becomes clear that luxury collections have never been just about cars, watches, jets, or works of art. They are, above all, about conscious choices, long-term vision, and a healthy relationship with money. The big question here is simple. Are you using your resources to consume or to build something that will make sense 10, 20, or 30 years from now? How someone handles small choices today reveals exactly how they would handle large fortunes tomorrow. Perhaps you're not yet buying rare pieces or participating in exclusive auctions, and that's okay. The principle is the same at any level. It starts with choosing to learn before spending, studying before investing, valuing quality over quantity. A well-chosen book, a course that changes your perspective, an asset purchased consciously. These are already signs of a mindset that thinks like the great collectors. Now, the burning question. If money ceased to be the center of your life, what would you be building with it? What legacy, what story, what mark would you leave on the world? Think about it carefully. And if this content opened your mind, provoked you, or made you see the game in a different way, subscribe to the channel, activate notifications, and continue this journey with me. Here, we don't talk about superficial wealth. We talk about vision, strategy, and real transformation.